Exo1 is the name of this new, I call it a community startup. It's an endeavor. It's an idea to bring all the things that I've been doing in the past 9 years, starting with Silicon Valley tours, or maybe 12 years starting with TED, together in an online community that I want to inspire with the things that I see and hear from my work and from the conversations that I have in this very, very privileged life of meeting people who see things others don't, working with them on their talks, accompanying them on their stages, TED, Singularity, TEDx, many of these. So much brilliance, so much beauty of thoughts and visions and forecasts, so many good news when we think about the future. That is that, okay, I want to start this community to do this for you and to give you weekly updates on what I see is happening out there and who I've met that I want to introduce to you. So let's start with the Exponential update. When you look into Exponential...
First a question, Nick, how did you get the name?
I'm going to go to this. I'm going to.
Okay, sorry.
I'm going to share the name. The reason for the name, I'm going to share that with you.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the exonomics. Let's talk about accelerating change, which basically is what exponential growth is all about. And when you don't know how to start a presentation, so this is kind of my first life hack that I share with you. If you don't know how to start a presentation, go to Wikipedia and look for a definition. And it's always a good start of a presentation with the definition that you found on Wikipedia. And when you look up exponential or exponential change, this is basically what you get. And what it says is that there is a lot of change. There's a lot of increase in rate of technology change that suggests faster and more profound change in the future. And that may or may not be accompanied by equally profound social and cultural change. And that basically means, in other words, there are change forces, and that are technology, environment, and population change forces, and they're hitting in at exponential acceleration. And we're not ready for this. And that's interesting because kind of start with bad news is something I would not suggest when you give a presentation. But the bad news is no one of us can actually understand what's happening and what's going on. And even those who are working on it on a daily basis, they have to write it down to better understand what that could mean. So we can take it for granted that a lot of things that are happening, that are waiting for us, that we're not prepared for. And even more to this, I think it's more important to understand that, or get close to understanding the ideas behind economics. We have 120 years of Moore's law. Gordon Moore predicted 120 years ago that the price performance of computing power will double every 18 months, of which that the Moore's law came out as the underlying principle of exponential change. And we see this beautifully shaped exponential curve in many developments that I'm also going to tackle throughout the next 60 minutes, let's say. So here's one thing, and I think prediction is always a good thing to hold tight to. There is a lot of predictions going on, and here's my first one, and that's 80% of today's Fortune 500 companies will not exist in 10 years from today. That means only 20% of today's Fortune 500 companies will exist in 10 years from today. And about this prediction, how many of the Fortune 500 companies exist, you can also actually look back, that you will see the Fortune 500 companies from 2010 and you compare them with today's, 50% of them don't exist anymore. So the problem with this is that I think that this is a crap, that I think this is B-shit. I think that we're missing something very important out of the equation when we look into this prediction. And that's the fact that I think in 10 years from today, only 50 companies will actually be Fortune whatever relevant. I don't think that 500 companies in 10 years from today will be relevant on a list to look at. And maybe 50 is already a lot. And that's a massive change, because it doesn't only mean that companies that are here might not be there in 10 years. It also means that a lot less organizations in the world will tackle the same issues. I just want to let this sink for a while. A lot less organizations than today will tackle the same issues. And we know it already, right? We have one Google, we have one YouTube. So there's 2 search engines that belong to the same company. We have one Facebook. And of course, there is something happening in China, but that's only because Facebook is banned there. We have one Amazon, well, we have Alibaba that goes together with the Amazon looking in the same market. But again, there's an issue with China. But you can see already, there are so many companies that have been dealing with books, they've been dealing with libraries, with archiving, with retail before, and they've been disrupted and reduced down to a few. And that's something that we're going to see happening throughout all the other industries. And I'm going to talk about the future of cars today, and we have 111 car brands today. The question is, how many car brands would we have in the future? Maybe 3 or 4? I don't know, but it's not going to be 111. So that's already a bit of fact that a lot of organizations will deal with the fact that they can't tackle a problem someone else has solved already. So the companies that are remaining, we call them exponential companies. So let's look into the difference, the linear organization and the exponential organization. I think you've heard me saying these two words a lot before. The linear organization are usually a one purpose driven company. And most of the time, the purpose is making money, right? That's a linear mindset, making money by doing something right. And that doing right is usually having something they call a unique selling proposition, a competitive advantage, a good structure, maybe lean, a good process, maybe design thinking, a streamlined business model. Maybe they work with a business model canvas because they understand if the cost of revenue is lower than the revenue, they make money and they're successful. And in most of these cases, the linear organization also determines which product can be bought, which products are offered to the market. And that's a common denominator. Something good happened in the past, though, right? I've mentioned some of these buzzwords already: lean, design thinking, business model canvas. And also this customer-centric design is a good thing because it has improved the footprint of linear organizations, right? The products have become more relevant and better over the past, but that that's not enough, right? There are still linear organizations. The problem of the linear organization, and when we look into what I've just listed, is that they're money greed. They only want to make money. They are having issues with shareholder value and all these things that have been discussed a long time before. They're competition driven because if they want to throw products into the market, even if they want to throw relevant products into the market, the first look is, what is my competitor doing? How can I be better than my competitor? They're product aggressive. A very linear mindset, linear organization mindset is, does it scale? Does the product scale? And scale means selling one product as many times as possible, which brings us to this problem of complexity. Because if we look at this, where we want to sell products as many times as possible, what we need to do after a launch, when there is a spike, we need to add features. We need to make the same product attractive again. And when you look at this, we call this the product death circle. You see that there is a launch with a spike and then it drops. And then you add features which might create another spike, and that's great. And it drops again, and you do this again, and you do this again. And it's good for 3 times or maybe 4 times. But what it does, it makes products more and more complicated. And no one is hired to be complicated. No one ever wants to buy complicated stuff. But that's what we are. We have complexity of options and with complexity of products of these linear organizations. Linear organizations are also control driven and process slow. I've been in this situation that I worked for Siemens. It's been a while ago, but it was interesting because I was buzzed by the fact that they had so many internal processes. So I asked them, how long would it take if the last customer would leave the building that you continue having the same workload? And they said 2 to 3 months. Which basically means, in other numbers, that they have 80% internal processes and only 20% external delivery, which is crazy. And they're biased. They make decisions based on opinion. I like it or dislike it. A strategic company decision might be driven by the personal preference of one person. And that means that what you see also here, they started lacking market inspiration. Markets are inspired by old organizations and new organizations and old organizations are trying to catch up. Open a car magazine and count just the amount of headlines that say the next Tesla killer is on the road. All these legacy companies are trying to be more attractive than new companies because they lack market inspiration. Whereas exponential organizations, they are full purpose driven. That means they understand we need to provide operating system for market spaces. On market spaces, we see something happening, and that's customers being part of a circular economy. And a circular economy means that what you produce somehow has another life, or can be reused, or can be returned back to a raw material that's used again. And what we're doing when we're taking customers part of the circular economy, we enrich them, we enable them, and we support them to follow their individual preferences. Does it make sense so far for you? Okay.
Sure.
Exponential organizations understand they have to start with a vertical and really well understand what is happening in that vertical, and then they expand horizontal. Amazon started selling books, and on the journey of selling books, every element they analyzed like a data company and turned it into a horizontal business model option. They understood that warehouses as being part of the chain, their product is Cubator. They have a lot of empty space because they put the books always in the same space, in the shelf, in the lane, in the aisle. And they have their Excel sheets where they put their books, but a book is not, I don't know, like lane 4, aisle 20. A book is 21 cubic centimeters, and they just need to figure out where do they have the space of 21 cubic centimeters, because the only thing they need to know is where did I put the book so I can take it back when I need it. And that's how they started going in a horizontal path from the vertical of selling books. And you can see it as well with Tesla and other exponential organizations. They always start growing vertical. Exponential organizations are not customer-centric, they're customer-obsessed. And it makes a huge difference if you're customer-obsessed, because if you're obsessed about someone, you don't want to play around him, you really want to know him by heart. And you really want to understand every issue of his life to improve it and make it better. That's why the idea of moonshot thinking comes from an exponential mindset. To change the life of 1 billion people in the next 10 years is this kind of definition of moonshot thinking. That's an exponential organization mindset. So what are the traits of the data companies? One is, as I said before, is supposed to be biased. They see that data is information, and information is more important than opinion. And every activity produces information. Everything we're doing delivers information. The least common denominator of every industry in the world is that all of their activities produce information. And the question is how, when, and where can we collect this information? Where do we get this information from? Because when we get this information from, we make different future decisions. It's a loop, right? Information feeds back to the next decision, and you repeat this. So where does this data come from? Of course, technology like sensors and stuff, but it also comes from customers, right? You look at customer behavior, you look at customer decisions, you want to collect all the things that are happening. You can look into the production and say, what do we learn from the production? But you can also look at the products, like how do we, do we have to equip our products with sensors to provide us with information? When we look back to the automotive industry, and I'm going to talk about future of cars in a minute, you can also say that, well, everything is there. We just have to, we don't have to make better cars. We have to equip our cars with sensors so they can mine relevant information, because that's what we're lacking. The car industry is not producing bad cars, and it will never inspire a market by producing better cars, because no one who owns a new car today has the feeling that he owns a bad car. Well, some people who've driven a Tesla and then goes back to an OEM might think that he drives an old car, but other than that, it's not a bad car. So you can't inspire and grow in a market by solving a problem. It's not a problem. And that's what the OEMs are doing. They're trying to produce better cars. And they're actually also claiming Tesla for not producing a good car. So the product can also be a solution to provide you with data. Oopsie. Environment, of course, what's happening all around us. There's so much information that we need, right? If we have accurate wind information, that's $1 billion business in the energy space. Oopsie, every time I admit someone. So there is this saying that data is gold, and data is not gold, because gold is something that's scarce and you need to mine it and you need to find it, but data is not scarce. Data is all around us. The problem is that a lot of organizations had a lot of data but not using it, or even more organizations don't have the data. So you have to figure out, how can I use the data? How can I loop the data that's there or that I lack? How can I get this information? And then it becomes gold, but data per se is not gold. let's talk about a few exponential technologies. AI, robotics, AR. This is not new to you, right? These are the technologies that are growing at exponential pace because they're solving these exponential problems. And the United Nations have their sustainable development goals nicely put together, the key problems to be solved. That's why I'm not, that's why I'm not going deeper into this. And of course, yeah, we have this dilemma that we're consuming 4 planets. Greg Davis has just joined us, and he's also part of the community, and will also contribute talking about the future of food, which is a core discipline and the question on how can we get out of the fact that we're killing ourselves right now by the way we're feeding ourselves.